Hello, welcome to Critical Conversations. I'm your host, Karissa Dean. Today is such a fun day for me. I love the days where I just block time to record podcasts for you. So you're welcome. How are you? What's going on in your world? I absolutely adore those of you who reach out to me, tell me about what's going on in your worlds, what you find supportive, what's not, maybe as supportive, maybe that's poking nerves or whatever. But I'm super excited to share this episode because I think it is it's close to my heart. I know it's close to a handful of my clients' hearts. And this one is all about how do you hold on to that beautiful relationship you've cultivated with the person that you've decided to call your partner and not lose your goddamn mind when you have kids. So this one is definitely going to be geared towards, parents, but I think there's a lot of yummy tips for those of you who are dating or in a marriage. Maybe you don't have kids yet, but you want to have kids. Maybe you never want to have kids. If you don't have kids, I still think that you're going to find value in this. I also think that if you don't have kids or you're never planning to have kids, you might be able to understand your friends or family that do. So give it a listen anyways. I'm so glad you're here for this. This conversation is just so close to my heart because right now we are in an era where Ruby doesn't need us. And it's really sad. She's 10, she's in 5th grade now. And she has always, we've always raised her to be very independent, very, courageous. She's very independent by nature. And then, you add on Nigel and I really speaking into her, about how she needs to advocate for herself and, really pushing her to when we're out at a restaurant, she needs to order her own meal. She needs to look the waiter or the waitress in the eye and say, please and thank you. And really teaching her about, no one else is going to give you what you need. You know what you need. And so you have to ask for it. So we obviously have pushed her to be this hyper independent person. But really it started hitting like the last month or so. Nigel and I are like, she's going to all these different sleepovers and she's going to this play date and she's riding down the street to go to her friend's house after school. And she's, hanging out at the barn without us and no, you're fine. Just drop me off. And, I don't really want you to watch me or whatever it is. And, so the other night she wasn't feeling very good. We were going to go out to dinner as a family. And she's like, you and daddy should just go. Like, you haven't had a date night in forever. And Nigel and I look at each other and we're like, where did this kid come from? And yeah, you're right. Okay. So we go on this date. And we're like having so much fun. But there's this moment where Nigel looks at me and he's like, what are we going to do? And I was like, more of this. And it was like in that moment where we realized how extremely important it is to continue to date your partner, to continue to cultivate curiosities about each other. And the funny thing is, so much has changed in just 10 years of Ruby being alive. But like even before that, Nigel and my relationship has changed so much in the 15 years that we've been together. And so I want to talk about this because I think that, I say this with so much love and compassion in my heart. There's a lot of people who stay married because they don't want to impose the trauma of getting a divorce onto their kids. And so their kids go to college or whatever, and then they get a divorce because when the kids leave or when the kids need less of you, you start to look at what's happening in the room around you. And often you look at the other person and you're like, I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you enjoy. I don't really enjoy you, or I don't really understand you anymore. Or, we like different things. We've just been, one of us has been taking care of the kids. The other has been doing this. And so I think, how do you avoid that? Well, I think you avoid that by constantly dating, by constantly remaining curious about each other. And I know that that sounds like so cliche and simple, but it's not. And I want to talk about this, and I'm going to use myself as an example because I personally have changed so much in the last year that it really has been a challenge, I think, for Nigel to keep up with me. And there's been a lot more conversations happening in our house than I think we had years ago. And it's because we've realized we have to communicate even more now because we're spending so much time doing other things. You know, we're working really hard in our businesses, and then we're also working really hard to, you know, provide and do things for Ruby. So usually it is like a tag team of like, okay, I'm dropping her off, you're picking her up, you know, this and that. And so we're conversing about like day-to-day operations. But like what the conversation I'm saying you need to have is that intimate one about where are we going? What's our life going to look like? You know, where do we want to live? How do we want to live? You know, what's it going to take for us to get there? What are you willing to do? What am I willing to do? And so it's like that constant aligning of like the values and the dream and the goals and like what we're doing to get there as a team, right? So it's like coming back together as a team. And I think it's so interesting because especially in entrepreneurship, it's like you think about, oh, I need to have that meeting with my team, right? I need to connect with my team. But how often are you doing that in your relationships? And I think for Nigel and I, it's like we had this like boom, aha moment where I'm like, we have to talk about other things than just our day to day. Like we have to have those like intimate late night chats, right? So like I remember when you're first dating somebody, right? Those are the chats that you have staying up until 1 a.m. Or 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. You know, those drunken chats or those, you know, late night chats, you know, where you're eating nachos in bed or whatever it is for you. For us, it was usually like, you know, post going out to a party and talking and being like, oh, I really like how Steve and Joe show up and they do this and like we should do that. And you know, we would always have these really cool conversations after we connected with other couples. So anyways, okay. Back to the thing. So in the last year, I've changed so much. My goals, what I want to create, and it's like we're constantly having to come together and have these deeper connections. So we go out to dinner and we're like, okay, what do we want to do? And I'm like, ooh, this is fun. Like, let's create and let's create together. And let's get curious about like, what do you want to do? And so he's like, what's something that you've always wanted to do? And I was like, I've always wanted to try cutting horses. And if you don't know what that is, it's the really fucking fancy, very athletic horses that are low to the ground. And they basically, you go into an arena and there's a bunch of cattle and you pick one that is going to challenge you enough, but like also work for you. And so you kind of like, quote unquote, sort this cow out from the rest of the herd. And it's timed and all this. I don't think I want to compete in it. I just really think that it's such a unique, it's such a unique thing to the equestrian space because it's like one of the few sports where you don't have a lot of bit contact. So like, you know, horses have those, they're called bits in their mouths or a halter. And so you're kind of using that to guide them. But this is really like this intimate communication. So anyway, so we get into this like deep conversation about how I really want to do this because I think it's really neat, the horse and human connection and the trust that you have to do these quick, agile movements without much use of the bit. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. I would try that. And I'm like, fuck yes. Oh my God. We just found something that he's like, I'm willing to try this. That sounds kind of fun. And then he's like, will you go fishing with me again? And I was like, no. But like, then I had to, he's like, but remember you used to like it. Like we used to fish all the time. And I was like, shit, you're right. And so, you know, when you go on these dates and you talk about things that are not the day to day, not how are we going to pay this bill, not how is Joe Schmo gonna re-roof the house this winter, and how are we gonna get the kids from here to there, and how's the college fund, and what's your mom up to? It's like all that goes to the side, and you dream together, and you play, and you have fun. And so it's like we just had this like amazing dinner. talking about like all this random stuff. You know, he's like, do you want to go skydiving? Do you want to do this? And I'm like, fuck no, I hate skydiving. You know, do you want to go in a hot air balloon? Like, we're just talking about like random things we could do together. And it was just really fun and lighthearted, right? And I think so much of, especially when you have kids or you're trying to buy a house or you're trying to take care of family members or, you know, you're getting over an illness, it's like so much of your conversations that you're having with your partner can just be about like, you know, that thing, right? That thing that's like front of the mind. But what I'm challenging you to do is dream with your partner, talk about different things, like see if there's a common interest. Can you guys like go to a wine paint night? Can you like, what are you willing to try? Do you want to go to a cooking class together? Like what classes, what can you do together? What are you willing to try with your partner to kind of like bring some va-va-voom back into your relationship? Okay, so anyways, so Nigel and I have this great time. We have so much fun. Ruby's at home alone. She's 10. I don't really give a shit what your opinions are. She's like probably more responsible than I am. She can drive my car better than I can. Like, she's a badass. Not worried about her at all. She's got 3 dogs here. Nobody is coming in here to touch her. She's got a phone. You know, she's fine. We usually leave one of our phones behind so she has somebody to call. She also has a Gab watch, which if you are wanting to give your kids a level of freedom without giving them a phone that has access to apps and the internet, look at Gab, Gabb. It is the number one thing I recommend to anyone who's like, I want to give my kid a device. Give them a Gab watch or a Gab phone. Protect them, keep them safe, keep them off the apps, keep them off of downloading random games. End rant. I'm going to write that down. I should do a thing about Gab. Okay. Kids and media. All right. That'll be another podcast. Okay. So anyways, leave your opinions aside. I don't really care what you think. It works for us. Okay. So we finished dinner and we're like, okay, now what? It's 9:00. And I was like, we should go to this bar. And he was like, oh my God, we haven't been there in forever. That'll be so fun. We walk there because we're like 2 blocks away. So we walk there and it's like dead. And I was like, fuck. So I'm like just chatting up with the bar. You know, we sit down at the bar and we're just chatting up with the bartender. And we're like, oh my God, is it always this dead? Like, it's a Saturday night, like 9:00. Like, is it going to get busy? Like, what's going on? And so it's like, we just, you know, reminiscing, like we learned a lot had changed. The owner had sold. They're doing business differently, blah, 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 blah. It's not the same bar. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll have a drink with this lady, give her a great tip, and we'll go to the next place. So we go to the next place and they're closed. And then we go to another place and it's like totally like not happening. Like it's not what we would normally go to at all, which is fine. But, you know, so there we are, you know, we've been together 15 years and all these places that we'd frequented, you know, years and years ago when we would go out, like quote unquote, go out on a Saturday night, you know, they're non-existent. And I think that is such a beautiful picture to paint for you, because what's going to be non-existent is if you don't fucking date your partner like you used to. Your partnership will be non-existent because over time, too much will change and you will miss those changes, right? Like we drive by these bars all the time and I've missed the changes, right? I never got curious enough to go back to the bars and now they're completely different. And so my point is that you can live your life doing these day-to-day like routine things and you're going to miss so much that by the end of it, the picture will be totally different and you may or may not want to be in that picture anymore, or the person who used to be in that picture may or may not want to be in that picture with you either. And so how do we do this? How do we survive in a world that has a 50% divorce rate? Don't quote me on that. I was listening to a podcast and I was driving and somebody gave the statistic that 50% of marriages will fail. And in my head, I was like, that is so absolutely fucked up. And I know I've watched people who I know get married young or get married old or never get married. And I see the divorces right in front of my own eyes with people I love, people I went to their weddings. And it's shocking. 50%. And it got me thinking, why? Why? And I think that this is it. We get too busy living day to day. Get up, go to work, come home, take care of the kids, take care of the house, take care of the animals, go to bed. Like we get so stuck in the routine of like, I have to do all these things, right? And then it's like the weekend comes and it's like, so-and-so has this thing and so-and-so has this thing and you go here and I'm going to go there. Da, 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 da. And it's like, and then we book this one family trip, right? We're all going to Disneyland or we're all going to Europe or whatever. And sometimes those trips are amazing and they're beautiful and you have these beautiful moments. But again, it's like stress because you're doing. And what I'm suggesting to keep your marriage fresh and fun, or your partnership, you don't even have to be married here, you guys, but to keep it light, you got to have time for play and for dreaming and for driving. Like, so, Nigel and I are like, okay, well, we have nowhere to go, but we're like, he has this fancy Mustang that he's spent all this time and money, rehabbing. And he's like, let's just drive around for a little bit. And so we just like drove around for a little bit. You have to make time for that. The spontaneous adventure or the spontaneous conversation, right? And be willing to try new things because you're changing and your partner's changing. And you have to keep finding commonality, right? It's like Nigel and I, we spend a lot of time doing what we need to do, what we have to do for the farm or for Ruby or for our business or for the house. There's sacrifices that we're making constantly just to quote unquote get it done. But what are the sacrifices that we can make to keep our relationship strong? To really forage that thing that would set us apart and keep us on the 50% that stays married. How do we do that? It's like to get a little nitty gritty intimate talk with you. What are you doing to keep the sex alive in your relationship? Because that is a huge connection. That is a huge piece of marriage. And if you have young kids who are constantly in your bed, you have got to figure out where and how you are keeping sex alive. Not as a to-do task. Let me rephrase that. You cannot just be like, we have to have sex once a week or twice a week or whatever it is. You get one blowjob a month, like whatever. No. I'm talking about like the spontaneous, we're going in the bathroom. We're going to bada bing, bada boom real quick and fun because it's spicy, because it's fun, because I am attracted to you. My hormones, my whatever they're called, pheromones are going off and I got to have you right now. That is the kind of sex I'm talking about. The kind where it's like, you got to just get close to the person and you got to feel them in a different way than if you were out in public. Really key, I think, for a really solid marriage is the fun in the bedroom or bathroom, wherever. Okay. Inside joke between me and Nigel. You will never know why. But where is that existing? And I look at like some of the older generations, it's like, I wouldn't say that they're loveless, but passionless, right? Like, what kind of a relationship do you want? Like, I know what I value is that passion, that like deep, intimate conversation, right? That intimacy. I value that. Sometimes it's quick because it has to be, and sometimes you get to take your time because you make the time. And this is why I'm always telling clients and people, like, you got to date your partner. You got to go on trips without your kids. 1 night, 2 night. I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get there. I get it. But it is so valuable for you to have that alone time together with your partner. without the dogs, without the animals, without the kids. You got to change your space. You got to go somewhere different. You know, Nigel and I, a lot of the times we just get a hotel here in Portland for the night. You know, we hire a babysitter. The babysitter comes, they're going to stay overnight, or Ruby goes to Grammy or grandpa's or aunt or uncle. We send the dogs off and we're like, we're going away for one night. We're going away because I don't want to think about the laundry. I don't want to think about the dishes. I don't want to think about the dogs. I don't want to think about Ruby. I just want to be fully present with you. So like an easy prescription to bring back some va-va-voom into your relationship is do that. Find somewhere for everyone else to go. Book yourself one night somewhere. Doesn't have to be fancy, right? There's great deals on Hotel Tonight. There's amazing Airbnbs all over. Trust me, the energy it will take to set this up, the money it will take to cover, you know, the babysitter, whatever it is, you know, the doggy daycare will be worth it, because what you're creating is a long-lasting, intimate connection with your partner that you can't get if you are inundated with the normal day-to-day. So how do you keep the juju alive in your relationship? What does that look like for you? It could look totally different for you. I don't know. Like, your relationship is your relationship. You do what you need to do in your relationship. I can only speak for me and give you the advice of what I know is working to keep me and Nigel super, super passionate, madly in love. Like, literally, you know, I think 2 years ago I was going to leave him. 5 years ago, I was going to leave him. And now I'm like, nah, he's my person. And it's just totally different. And it's different, I think, because we started to make this a priority, to make us a priority. Because I started to see Ruby's needing less of me. So where am I connecting with you? And it took a while for us to get on the same page with it, you know, but like now here we are, like we don't have a kid in our bed. We co-slept with Ruby. So for a long time, it was really challenging. But now she doesn't want to sleep with us. You know, just last night, Nigel's like, I really liked when you rubbed your butt up against me. And I was like, you're welcome. I had my nice hat on. You know, like create little moments where you're telling your partner, I care about you. I love you. I want to touch you. You're important to me. Versus like, did you take out the trash? You were late picking up Sally Joe. Oh, you forgot this at the grocery store. Why isn't dinner ready yet? Like, I mean, you can go mad if you only focus on what has to get done, right? Stop focusing on that for like one day, 24 hours. 24 hours, just look at your partner like you looked at him the first time you met him. Him, her, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm saying him because I'm thinking about me and Nigel. You have to remember why you fell in love. You have to find reasons to stay together. You have to do that through getting curious about who each other is now, because it's different. I'm not the same that I was when Nigel met me when I was 21 years old. Jesus criminy. When I was 21 years old, oh my God, I don't even know if I want to meet me. But like, he has to fall in love with who I am now. Karissa, age 37. Who's that? What's that look like? So look at your partner differently because you're putting on a new lens. You're putting on a lens of curiosity. And you know what? That might turn out that it's not the right person for you anymore. That is okay. Like, again, people change. And sometimes we can't go together. Sometimes the change is we need to be separate. And to those people, what I would say is don't fucking stay together for your kids, because all your kids are learning is to be miserable out of like whatever commitment you think is necessary. If you are not genuinely happy, if you are not safe, if your partner is someone who just isn't willing to do the work, because that's the other thing. It takes a partner who's willing to do the work. The only reason Nigel and I are still together is because he was willing to do the work. He was willing to go to counseling. He was willing to have difficult conversations with me. He was willing to like look at the messiness of us, right? I love the song by Post Malone, the I Had Some Help, right? Because it's like he's saying in that song, it's not just me. I had some help. Like it takes two. And so again, like to make this work, it will take your partner saying, okay, I'm in. Yeah, let's do it. If your partner doesn't want to go on the date, then like, I don't know how much you should try. Definitely go to counseling. Nigel and I went to counseling. But like, again, if you're not in a happy relationship, can you make it happy? Are you willing to try to look at each other, to like have those difficult conversations, to hire the counselor, to put the energy into it, you know, to seek out whatever modalities you need to seek out to spice things up? Are you being honest with yourself? Like I have to be honest with myself. 5-6 years ago, I was not wanting to have sex with Nigel. Right? Like, okay, no wonder we're having a hard time. Like, I'm not interested in sex right now because I have some stuff going on with my body. I don't feel comfortable in my body. And no, you're not like, how are you showing up to the relationship? What does your partner need? Do you even fucking know what they need? Are you communicating what you need? Like, I'm at a point now where I can straight up just tell Nigel what I need, and he can tell me what he needs. And it's like, I sometimes I don't always like the feedback that I'm getting, but I get to take the feedback and I get to go, okay, well, yeah, you have a good point. I'm going to work on that. You know, how you have to be a willing participant in your relationship. It takes work. And I think it's the hardest work we have because it's the work that nobody wants to talk about either, because it's not that glamorous. And I think it's so, again, it's like so unique to you and to your situation and to your dynamic. You know, it's there isn't a cookie cutter methodology. But I do want to say, like, don't stay together if you're really truly unhappy, if you've put in some effort, if you're met with so much resistance, if you're not safe, get the fuck out. Like, I'm not an advocate for anyone staying in a relationship just to make it work so that they're not part of the 50% that didn't make it. But like, I do think we give up easy. I think we give up really easy right now because we like the instant feedback. We like the instant results. We're kind of addicted to that instant gratification. So I don't know where you're at. I will say I love John and Julie Gottman. They have some great books. The Love Prescription is a book that Nigel and I used. We got a Gottman counselor. That was amazing for us. It really helped. You know, the best feedback I ever got. We were actually laughing about this last night. Our counselor was like, you guys deserve each other. And it's so true because, you know, like I'm a shit to him in weird ways and he's a shit to me in weird ways. But it's like we both show up to the table to do the work, to say I'm sorry, to listen to the feedback, to hear the other person, to validate the other person. You know, I think there's a period too where it was like, how can I support you today was a big part of something that we practice with each other, because I think you just forget sometimes, like your partner's just over there doing stuff and it's like you forget that they're a human and that they might need something from you and they might not know how to communicate it. But you putting that offer out there might be a bridge, you know, to help gap. And, you know, I mean, honestly, relationships are so hard. I think it's the hardest thing you'll ever do is be in a relationship with anyone. But ultimately, the kicker here of this whole conversation is I had to really work on the relationship with myself so that I could be the partner I am today to Nigel and to Ruby. I really had to learn how to love myself, how to accept myself. I had to stop. I had this terrible habit, and I still have it sometimes, where I deflect a lot of the compliments Nigel gives me. And so I don't even hear them. And then I'm mad at him because he didn't compliment me, or he never says anything nice, or you're always just a dick, right? And he's like, well, actually, this morning I told you how pretty you looked. And Ruby will be like, he did, Mom. So it's like, are you deflecting the goodness that your partner wants to give you? Like that's a you thing that you got to work on. So, my relationship got better because I fixed the relationship with myself. Again, this is why my motto is choose you, because it does all start with you, your life, your business, your relationships, what you want to have, what you want to bring forth into the world starts with, do you know yourself? Do you love yourself? Do you trust yourself? And love and trust of the self have to come before you can love and trust other people. Finding Prince Charming or Princess Charming, or getting a fairy godmother, those are all things that are outside of you, and it might feel good for an instant, but it's not sustainable. Those are the things that do ultimately end up failing, because you just lose yourself to that external thing versus knowing yourself, trusting yourself, and leading yourself. So that's the funny piece of it all. And I think too, there's a big portion of why my relationship with Nigel works so well right now, and it might not in the future. I'll just put that out there. Like everything can change, shit can happen. Who knows what's going to happen? But right now it works. And I think there was a piece of that too, where I had to let go of me wanting him to be somebody different. I really had to fall in love with who he is right here today and now. And that's been challenging, I think, because, he's 11 years older than me. And so he's really like slowing down. He doesn't want to exercise as much. His belly's a little big. And it's like, what's more important to me? Is it the person or is it his appearance? And that was my own shit. That wasn't his shit. That was my shit that I had to be like, wow, actually, like who you are as a human is more important to me than you having like a sexy six pack. But that was my shit that I had to like flip my head around and be like, oh, interesting. Where did that come from, Karissa? Like, how did you get there? Oh, it's because you're worried about what other people think. Oh, okay. Got some inner work to do there, KD. So like that's the piece of it too. It gets better when you're willing to look at it. It gets better when you're willing to get a little bit into the details of why do these feelings and emotions exist, and do I want them to exist in this way, or can I change the perspective? Can I shift my perspective? Can I change my mindset around this thing? Yeah. Ultimately, you got to date yourself. I think I started dating myself at the same time we kind of realized we needed to date each other. I started to take myself to yoga. I started to meditate more. I went on a Vipassana and spent 10 days in silence with myself. I often like to go to our beach house and work by myself for a few days, or just be by myself for a few days. I really started to date myself and get to know who I was and what it was that I wanted to be and have and do in this world, and what is important to me in a relationship. Is it more important for my partner to have a six pack, or is it more important that he's a really fucking awesome human who loves me so deeply that he's willing to do all these crazy things for me? That he's an awesome dad. He's such a good dad to Ruby. Like that's not happening anywhere else. That's so important to me. But it's like I had to know what was most important to me. I had to know myself first. So ultimately, your relationship with your partner might be a challenge right now because you're feeling your own discord about yourself. And so can you get curious about that? Can you get to know who you are? Can you get to love yourself? Can you get to trust yourself? Can you see where you're getting in your own way? And maybe you're deflecting your own ability to be loved, right? Like I can see there's this piece, in my history where I went to counseling and I realized that I had this protective mechanism where I was protecting myself from receiving Nigel's generosity and love because I really didn't love myself. I didn't know. It was weird to receive it. I didn't understand it. And it's a practice. And so, but it's possible. It's possible if you're willing to look at your shit. If you're willing to really create a solid relationship with yourself, then I think that you can have the most phenomenal relationship with your parents, with your partner, with your kids. But it all does start with you. It starts with, how am I showing up? What are my expectations? Where am I getting in my own way here? How am I participating in my own demise? I think for those of you who've listened to my story, the beginning of my personal development journey was me realizing that I was the fucking problem. Like, it was me. I was so big. I mean, I would say like 70% of the problem was me initially. And then, then it turned into like a whole, spiral of conversations and things. And it was work. It was work. But, thankfully, I had a partner who looked at me and said, okay, let's do the work. I mean, to be honest with you guys, I was like, peace. I'm out. And he was like, whoa, no. We're going to counseling. And I'm like, oh, that's the hard way. I don't want to do the hard way. I want to do the easy way, which, really is getting a divorce easy. No, but it seems easy because it was it would be less confronting, right? I wouldn't have to face my own shit. Yeah, I faced a lot of shit. Ugh, so confronting. Anyways, but it's worth it. Super fucking worth it. Yeah. Really worth it. Really glad I did it. Really glad that I have a partner who is willing to push me to do the work too, and supported me as I went through and battled my own demons and did my own personal healing alongside us figuring out how to be happily married again. So, that's my rant about relationships and how to make that shit work. Good luck. It's a challenge. Highly recommend finding a really awesome counselor. If you want a Gottman, I would recommend Gottman for relationships. John and Julie Gottman, look them up. They have books. They are on Instagram. They also have classes and workshops. If you are working with your relationship with yourself, I love internal family systems, IFS, I think is what it's called, to really get to know yourself. You can find a counselor who's certified in that method. And of course, I love coaching. I think coaching is amazing. I really believe in it. It's radically transformed my life, my relationships. I've watched it empower over 90 clients now. Whoop, whoop. Over 90 clients that I've had the pleasure of supporting, and really hoping to get to 100 before the end of the year. But we'll see. We'll see if I can do it. Yeah. Your relationship with yourself, I think, is pretty key. There's a lot of free resources and tools out there, but I do think, ultimately, if you want it to get better and you want it to get better faster, you're going to have to invest some time and some money into a program. What I will say is find somebody who you can jive with, who motivates you, who can help you be accountable, who inspires you. I think part of why we love our counselor is he's been married for a long time. He's an older guy. He's so funny, so down to earth, and his heart is in the right place, and he's such a good human, and it's not about money. He really, he met us where we were at, and he really pushed us, and he was honest with us and gave us a lot of raw truths that we had to, face together. So find somebody who's a good fit. It's not one size fits all out there. We had some, there was a trial and error process to that. And same thing with coaching, there's been trial and error process for me finding, the right people to motivate me and who I would want to work with as a coach. So anyways, make sure you vet your people before you invest in them, and really make sure it's a good fit, because if it's not a good fit, you're going to be resistant to it. It won't work. You're going to hate the process. And then you end up, probably going backwards instead of going forwards. So anyways, all right. That's it for today on Critical Conversations. You guys, we got a great lineup, a lot of interviews coming up, a lot of really good conversations. We're getting into that 1 year mark. I cannot even believe it. I'm so excited. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking, subscribing, following, and sharing. It means the absolute world to me. I really hope that this has been a beneficial conversation for you. Please make sure and share it with your best friend, and I'll see you at the next Critical Conversation.